Today's subjects had quite the little business going for themselves. A sick, serial killing business, but a business nonetheless. We're going back nearly 200 years and traveling across the pond to Scotland for this one. So let's talk first about some context. Businesses rely on supply and demand. It's kind of difficult to function, obviously, if you can't get the supply of materials you need to conduct your business. That is what was going on in Edinburgh, Scotland in the early 19th century. This was the place that medical students, researchers, scientists came to study anatomy at the time. One of the more infamous lecturers there was a man named Robert Knox. To study anatomy well, medical schools used corpses. These days, these bodies are usually donated with the knowledge and consent of the person who died and their family. That was not the case in Scotland back then. Scottish law at the time limited the bodies that could be used to people who died in prison, those who were suicides, foundlings, otherwise known as abandoned children, and orphans. That meant that there were not enough bodies for the anatomy classes. Now, the next bit will be a bit morbid, but body snatching began to increase to get enough corpses to meet the demand. For a little time, supply increased. In response to the body snatching, Scottish law didn't change. Instead, many burial grounds began using mort safes, which was like a big iron cage that was placed around the burial site to prevent people from breaking into it. Some graveyards even built watchtowers complete with guards to prevent body snatching. And so supply decreased again. William Hare owned a boarding house, and one of his lodgers, a man named Donald, died. He and his buddy, William Burke, decided to sell the body to Knox, and that's partly because Donald still owed some back rent. Knox gave them £7 10 shilling for the body. That would amount to about £952 or $1,155 today. That was a lot of money for Burke and Hare. A few months later, another lodger developed a fever, and Hare was worried that the illness would stop other boarders from renting in the house. So Hare and his buddy murdered the lodger and sold the body to Knox again. It was either Abigail Simpson or a man named Joseph that was likely their first murder victim in 1827. We say likely because no one can really be sure of the order of the killings. Hare's confession doesn't match the order in Burke's confession, and Burke also gave a second account which doesn't quite match up with the first. Unfortunately, some of the victims' names have also been lost to the fog of history. But Burke and Hare continued murdering people, 15 more of them over a year, until lodgers at Hare's house found the body of Margaret Docherty and summoned the police. Evidence collection then certainly wasn't what it is now. So they had problems proving how Docherty died, though they suspected it was suffocation. They had problems pinning the other deaths to Burke and Hare, and so they had to make a deal with the devil. And that they did. They granted Hare immunity from prosecution. He confessed to Docherty's murder and 15 others and gave all the details about his buddy's role as well. He gave details about Burke's wife's involvement, and the couple was charged for 3 murders. Burke was found guilty at trial for 1 of the murders. That was enough, given that the sentence was death. His wife was acquitted. They wasted no time hanging Burke. Fittingly, his body was then dissected and his skeleton was given to the Anatomical Museum of the Edinburgh Medical School, where it remains to this day. Body snatchers became known by the term burkers in Scotland after his trial. Knox would have known something was fishy about the bodies. They arrived after dark. They didn't come from a mortician. They were sometimes still warm. He would have known he was purchasing morbidly illegal goods. He did it anyway, and virtually nothing happened to him. He was condemned publicly and in the press, but he maintained his work, resigning, though, from the Royal College of Surgeons and ending up as a pathological anatomist in a London hospital. And of course, he had his life. Burke's wife, Helen, moved, and it is said that vigilantes followed her, seeking to kill her, but she disappeared and was never heard from again, so we know little to nothing of her fate. For Hare's part, he disappeared into history and was never heard from again. The same is so of his wife. Some historians believe they changed their names and returned to his birthplace in Ireland, living quietly until their deaths. Little more than 3 years after their morbid spree, Scottish law would finally change with the passing of the Anatomy Act of 1832, which helped to ensure that this particular motive for murder was finished in Scotland. Thanks for listening. Until next Saturday. If you're enjoying these videos and want more, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any videos. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.